I never thought I'd be writing something like this, but here I am trying to make sense of what's happened. My name's Dave, and I've been married to Lisa for about 5 years now. When we first got together, she seemed perfect, smart, funny, a bit bitchy, but in a way that I found charming. We met in college, hit it off right away, and I thought I'd found my forever. We had our usual ups and downs, but overall, I believed we had a good thing going. That was until about 2 months ago. Lately, Lisa's been acting weird. She's more distant, snapped at me over little things, and started staying out late without telling me where she was. I didn't want to be the paranoid type, but her phone suddenly became more shielded. Passwords I didn't know, late-night texts that vanished when I peeked over her shoulder. She'd brush it off with her usual attitude, calling me paranoid or accusing me of overthinking. But I could tell something was off. Still, I told myself maybe she was just stressed at work or dealing with other stuff. The real sign that everything was crashing down hit me when I came home. Early one evening. I wasn't feeling great, so I decided to skip volunteering at the Big Brothers program that night. I know Lisa volunteers there too, and she's proud of it. When I got home, her phone was buzzing nonstop. I peeked at it out of curiosity, and what I saw sent a shock straight through my chest. There were messages, flirty, risque texts, and not just innocent stuff. The worst part, they were from a guy named Mark, who I knew was her fellow volunteer. I had heard of him, he's a decent guy, but I never suspected, not in a million years. I didn't want to believe it at first. Maybe it was just some stupid joke, or maybe she was just being friendly. But the texts kept coming, and they made it pretty clear that something more was going on. They even talked about meeting after hours in his office at the community center. I was numb. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I decided I'd wait and see if she slipped up again. But I couldn't shake the feeling that my whole world was turning upside down. I started noticing her lying more. Her stories about where she was, who she was with, just didn't add up anymore. And that's when I knew I had to find out the truth for sure. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling around those texts. I was furious but mostly hurt. How could she do this? After all those times I stayed late at work, after all the little sacrifices I made, she was out there sneaking around with Mark. I couldn't believe I missed the signs, how blind I must have been. I kept thinking about her bitchy attitude lately, her coldness, the way she'd snap at me for no reason. All of it suddenly made sense. Next morning I decided to confront her. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to let her just brush it off. I waited until she left for her volunteer shift, then I went through her phone again, this time more thoroughly. I found even more messages, pictures, plans to meet, even a schedule of when she'd supposedly be working late. I felt my stomach turn. I hadn't felt this betrayed in a long time, maybe ever. When she came home that evening, I was waiting in the living room, her phone in my hand. Her face immediately changed when she saw me. She looked annoyed, like I was bothering her. I didn't waste any time. I held up her phone and said, "Who is Mark, Lisa? Tell me the truth." Her eyes flickered with that familiar bitchy glint, and she immediately started lying, saying I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that she was just friends with the guy. She tried to twist it, say they never met up, that I was overreacting. But I had the evidence right there, texts, pictures, a schedule. She spun her usual lies, calling me crazy, saying I was paranoid, that I was jealous. But I wasn't listening anymore. All I could see was her betrayal, the way she'd lied to my face, the way she'd sneaked around behind my back. That was the moment I knew I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I told her I knew about her affair, and her reaction just made me angrier. She smirked, like she thought she was untouchable. She said I didn't understand anything, that I was overreacting, that Mark was just helping her with some volunteer thing. But I knew better. The betrayal hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt a mix of shock, rage, and heartbreak all at once. I realized I'd been an idiot trusting her, thinking we had some kind of future. Her bitchy attitude, her lies, everything made sense now. I couldn't look at her the same way. And I knew then that this wasn't going to just blow over. I had to come up with a plan. I needed revenge, but I also knew I needed to figure out what I was going to do about us. I couldn't keep living in this lie. The pain was overwhelming, but part of me felt a strange sense of relief too. Finally, I knew the truth. That night after she stormed off, I stayed up, thinking about what I should do next. Part of me wanted to blow everything up immediately, but I knew I needed a plan. I couldn't just confront her again in anger and hope for the best. No, this had to be calculated. I started thinking about how deep her lies went about Mark, about everything I'd missed. I realized I couldn't just walk away without making her pay in some way. I wanted her to understand how much she'd hurt me, how betrayed I felt, and I didn't want her to get away with it. The first thing I did was look into Mark. I didn't want to be impulsive, but I needed to know what kind of guy he was, what kind of man would cheat with someone's wife. I did some digging, found his employer, looked into his social media, all the usual stuff. From what I found, he seemed pretty straight-laced, but I also saw enough to know he was just as guilty. I knew I didn't want to do anything reckless, but I was starting to get ideas. I needed leverage, something to make her pay for her betrayal. Over the next few days, I kept quiet, pretending everything was normal. Meanwhile, I gathered evidence, screenshots, detailed notes, and I even set up a little hidden camera in my office. I wanted her to think I was clueless, but I was planning my move. I was also watching her, how she behaved, who she was texting, and if she slipped up again. Meanwhile, she kept lying, playing her game, acting like I was crazy for doubting her. The more I watched, the more I realized how much she loved to lie and manipulate, that bitchy attitude of hers. It was just her defense mechanism, a way to hide the guilt. One day I decided I had enough. I couldn't live with this secret anymore. I planned a confrontation, not just with her, but I wanted to catch her in the act if I could. I told her I knew everything, how I'd been watching her, gathering evidence. Her eyes flickered with anger and contempt. She called me paranoid again, said I was nuts, and started throwing her usual lies. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I was done with her bullshit, that I had proof of her affair with Mark, and that I was going to expose her to everyone, her friends, her family, everyone. Her reaction was priceless. She got defensive, tried to gaslight me, called me a jealous loser. But I knew her game. I told her I was tired of her lies, tired of the cheating, tired of being made a fool of. I told her I was going to destroy her reputation if she didn't come clean now. That's when she finally snapped, started crying and pleading. She said she loved me, that it was a mistake, that Mark meant nothing, that she was just lonely. But I could see right through her. That was just her way of trying to save herself. I realized I had her cornered, and if I wanted to make her regret it, I'd have to execute my plan carefully. The anger and betrayal I felt only fueled my resolve to make her pay. The next few days felt like a slow burn. Every time I saw her, her fake tears and bitchy attitude made my stomach turn. She kept insisting it was just a one-time mistake, that she didn't mean for it to happen, and that Mark was just some guy who was there to help her with the volunteer project. That lie made me laugh bitterly in my head. I knew better. I'd seen the messages, the plans, the late-night meetups, and I definitely sensed that she enjoyed playing the victim, trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty for catching her. That was classic Lisa, her way of twisting everything around so she looked like the innocent one. I decided I wasn't going to let her keep playing those games. No way. I'd already gathered enough evidence. And I was scheming about how to use it. I wanted her to realize she'd crossed a line, and I was about to make sure she paid for it. I also figured I should get ahead of her plans. She was probably scheming to spin the story, maybe even try to turn the tables on me. That bitch. So I started talking to a few people who knew about her affair, just to get a gauge of what she might do next, and to see if I could get some backup or advice. Meanwhile, I set up a plan to catch her red-handed. I faked a scenario where I accidentally found her in the act. I started leaving little clues, like sending her texts that I knew she'd see, hinting I was onto her. I even scheduled a business trip for a few days so she'd think I was out of town. I wanted her to relax, maybe get comfortable enough to slip up. And slip up she did. One night I got a call from the volunteer coordinator at the community center. She'd been caught sneaking out of Mark's office after hours, and they saw her get into his car. That was the final straw. I felt a rush of satisfaction, but also a deep, simmering anger. I knew I had her now. She couldn't deny it anymore. I wasn't even sure if I wanted to confront her face to face right then. I was too pissed. Instead, I called her up and told her I knew everything, that I was done with her lies, and that I was going to handle this my way. Her voice on the line was full of bitchy defiance. She told me I was overreacting, that she loved me, that Mark was just helping her out, that I was jealous and insecure. But I didn't care anymore. I decided I'd teach her a lesson she wouldn't forget. I'd turn the tables, make her regret ever crossing me. I already knew what I was going to do. She thought she could cheat, lie, and manipulate her way out of it. Not happening. I was about to show her just how much she fucked up. This was only the beginning of her downfall, and I was ready to make sure she paid for every lie, every betrayal. Fueled by a mixture of heartbreak and rage, I knew I had to act fast. The game was on, and I wasn't going to lose. The days that followed were some of the most intense of my life. I kept quiet, playing it cool on the surface, while behind the scenes I was meticulously executing my plan. Every message, every detail I gathered, I stored away, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. I wanted her to feel the chaos I felt, an overwhelming sense of betrayal and anger that she'd brought on herself. I started making subtle moves, sharing bits of evidence with a few close friends, just enough to make her feel the walls closing in. Meanwhile, I made sure to keep her in her comfort zone, letting her think she was still in control. But I was already planning my endgame. I knew she'd never admit to what she did willingly, so I had to force her hand. That's when I arranged for one more accidental encounter, something that would finally push her over the edge. One afternoon, I told her I was going to do some errands, but I actually stayed close by, watching her from a distance. Sure enough, I saw her slip into Mark's office again, this time with her purse over her shoulder, looking over her shoulder to see if anyone was watching. I parked a block away and waited. When she finally left, I followed her. She got into Mark's car, and I saw that they were heading toward a hotel just a few miles from our home. That was the moment I had been waiting for. I pulled into a nearby parking lot, parked my car, and watched them walk inside. My heart was pounding, but I felt a strange sense of clarity. This was it. I had the proof, the evidence. I snapped a few pictures on my phone just to be sure. I knew she'd never believe I had seen her in the act if I didn't catch her myself. And now I had everything I needed. When she finally came back home that night, I was waiting. She looked different, defeated, maybe even a little scared. I didn't say much at first. Instead, I pulled out the pictures I'd taken, laid them on the coffee table. Her face went pale, and her usual bitchy smirk was replaced by shock and guilt. I looked her in the eyes and said, "It's over, Lisa. I know everything, the affair. Mark, all of it." Her reaction. She tried to deny it again, her voice trembling, saying I was nuts, that I was mistaken. But I didn't buy her bullshit anymore. I knew the truth, and that was all that mattered. That night I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness. Part of me was glad I finally confronted her, but a huge part of me was gutted. I loved her once, but now I saw her for what she really was, a lying, manipulative bitch who thought she could get away with anything. I realized I had to make a choice: continue this nightmare or cut my losses and get out. I sat there and thought about my options, knowing that the damage was done. I couldn't unsee what I saw, but I could decide what's next. That decision would come soon enough, once I figured out how I wanted to handle this mess. That night, after I showed her the evidence and she finally let her guard down, I felt a strange calm settle over me, mixed with a deep well of anger that refused to die down. I knew I couldn't stay with her, not after everything I'd uncovered. Her lies, her bitchy attitude, her blatant disrespect. She thought she could do whatever she wanted and I'd never find out. But I found out. And now it was clear that I had to do something about it. The next morning I sat her down, told her I made my decision. I was done. I told her I loved her once, but I couldn't stay married to a woman who would cheat on me with her mentor from the Big Brothers program, after I'd trusted her and supported her in every way I could. I told her I was filing for divorce. Her face contorted with rage, then with tears, then with that classic "I'm the victim" look she always threw on when she was cornered. She tried to guilt-trip me, calling me jealous, insecure, telling me I was overreacting, that she loved me and it was just a mistake. But I wasn't buying her anymore, seeing her in that hotel with Mark, the lies she'd spun, the bitchy attitude she'd used to manipulate me. It was too much. I knew that I had to make her regret this, and I had to do it in a way that showed her she could get away with betraying someone like me. I told her I had proof of everything, and I sent her the pictures I took. She looked like a trapped animal. That's when she finally broke down, crying and pleading, trying to salvage what was left. But I didn't want to hear it. I'd already made up my mind. I told her that her lies and her cheating had destroyed whatever trust we had, and I was done pretending. That day, I filed the divorce papers, and I made it clear that I wanted nothing to do with her anymore. In the weeks that followed, life was a blur. I moved out, started over in a new place, and slowly began piecing myself back together. I still feel the sting of betrayal, and I doubt I'll ever fully forget the pain she caused. But I learned something from all this. You can't ignore the signs, and trust is fragile. When someone shows you who they really are, believe them. Don't make excuses or think you're special enough to change them, because in the end, the betrayal cuts deep, and it's not easy to repair. Looking back, I realize I was naive to believe I could keep her happy or that she was capable of actual loyalty. But I also learned that you have to stand up for yourself, even in the face of the bitchiest, most manipulative lies. She thought she could cheat and lie her way out of everything, but I proved her wrong, and I'm finally free from her bullshit. The lesson: never ignore the warning signs, and never let someone cheat and lie their way into your life without consequences. Because once trust is broken, it's damn hard to put back together.